Welcome. I'm Rogers Anderson, Williamson County's mayor. And on our special edition, as we go around the county, we have one of those familiar faces here in Williamson County with us today in the studio, Mr. Ed Moody. Welcome, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm amazed that you have somebody like me on here.
Well, now, you're kind of cutting yourself short. We were visiting right before the show and actually went on for taping, and you were telling me about you've been married 62 years.
To the same woman.
To the same woman. And, well, you bound to have done something right that she would put up here. The wonderful, sweet lady.
That's right. She's a great girl.
You have, what do you tell me? How many children and grandchildren do you have? A lot of folks like to know a little bit about our guests, the personal side of them.
The greatest asset I have is my family. My wife Eileen, whom I met, as a matter of fact, when I came back from the service, girls had changed from the time I left, and I did not leave a girl to write to or anything while I was in service. I did write to some girls and got some letters and so forth. But anyway, I met Eileen, a boy that I went to church with, that said, let's go down to the YWCA. There's some nice girls come up there and dance on Saturday night. So that's where I met Eileen. And so when I was looking for a particular color in my girls, that I wanted a brunette girl and so high, so tall, and weigh so much, and those kind of things. And I saw her dancing with a guy, and so I thought, well, that's the girl I'm looking for. So before I left that night, why, I carried her home. So it went from there.
And you've had two girls?
We have two daughters, Rebecca and Patricia, who are both married, and each one of the girls has a boy and a girl, and of course they are all married now, and they are all married. Each one of the girls has one of our granddaughters has two little girls, Elise and Leah. Leah is 5 and Elise is 2.5, and they are the apple of my eye. Or all of them are, to tell the truth.
Well, Mr. Moody,
they're great.
I know that the family to you means almost everything.
It does.
And you can tell that in your demonstration and loyalty and your commitment. But there's also something that I know as I kind of take you down this path before we actually get to talking about some of the things in Franklin and Williamson County during your lifetime. I know that you're a Rotary member, you're a Rotarian. I see you you're there more frequent than I am. In fact, I just recently discovered, other than the first meeting, you have made every requirement for meeting dates, whether they've been weekly or monthly, sometimes they change, but 56 years of continuous service without missing a single time in which they count or check us off, as you understand. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I was over at another Rotary, and there you were too, getting a visitation at that one.
That's right. That's what they call a makeup. You're allowed a makeup there. You have 2 weeks' time to make up if you miss your regular meeting at your home place. If you're traveling or something like that, you have 2 weeks' time to make that up. And of course, they give you a slip that says that you were there and paid your dues to that Rotary Club, and you are accepted at another Rotary Club just like you were a member, because that's one thing about Rotary. It's international, and you're treated almost like a member, and it's very interesting. You meet some of the most interesting people at a various Rotary Club in various parts of the country. I have been very fortunate to have made up in several foreign countries, and some of the most interesting meetings I ever attended have probably been in foreign countries. One was in Munich, Germany. One was made up in Madrid, Spain, and in Portugal, and so. And one time we flew to Copenhagen and went up the Balkan Peninsula by boat and took our meals and slept on boat. And every day we would stop at a different town, but I only made up at one or two because they had a very small sign that said Rotary meets here, and I couldn't find many people or any people that spoke my language, and so that I couldn't speak theirs, so I did have a little trouble finding one, but I did find a place that had Rotary, and so happened I sat beside a gentleman who was there on an exchange program with the University of Alabama. So he was a...
And you didn't hold that against him?
Didn't hold that against him because he and I had a pretty good conversation while the meeting was going on.
Well, one of the things the Rotary has brought to Franklin, Williamson County, now there are several other Rotary groups that meet. There's different breakfast and different lunch groups, and they're men and women. In those early days, it was mostly males.
Right.
But now it's males and females, and each Rotary group has their own area of concentration that they want to give back, either in terms of scholarships or to different needy groups. But the real core of every Rotary, as it is with any business, which we'll talk about a little bit with yours, are the people that work inside the organization, whether it's the man out in the back changing the oil at a Moody's tire service, or it's the Rotary people inside that make the Rotary Club what it is. It is one of many worthwhile organizations, the Lions Clubs, the Civitans, the Exchange Clubs. They're all worthwhile ventures and very, very credible. But one thing that sticks out with me when you talk about the Rotary has been in your involvement with called the Noon Rotary now, that meets over at the Rec Center, has been the rodeo.
Right.
And the rodeo's involvement in our community every single year. To my knowledge, in those early days, it was an activity that really and truly you and several other men, and I'll let you talk about those men, how you got the rodeo to really focus into Franklin and to grow into the event that it is today. It is monumental, and many people have been involved. I'm not saying you or any one person run the rodeo, because it takes a village to put on that rodeo.
It takes an effort from everybody's. Every individual can have a job, and the rodeo as the beginning. About the time, Dr. Harry Guffey loved horses, and of course he never he was always on the rodeo committee, and when it began with Preston and John Folks, who came here from Texas, and I guess had a little bit to do with let's have a rodeo, and so that's kind of what it started. Of course, Dr. Guffey was for it, and then it wasn't but a year or so until Bob Corley came. Bob came from Texas, so we had about 5 or 6 people that were from Texas, and of course that knew about rodeos and knew what it took to put one on. And we had John and Preston. Well, just John for the first 2 years, and then Preston joined him, and so that's what really got it started. And they knew the people they could invite that would add some really excitement to it. And of course, Dr. Guffey always participated with cutting horses, and he did calf roping and things like that. But it took a lot of effort to get it started. But what makes the Rotary Club what makes Rotary is really the fellowship in working together, because you have to have a classification in order to become a Rotarian. They don't want all tire dealers in there. They don't want all insurance men there. They don't want all real estate men. They want a diversified group of people that when they go to Rotary, they can sit down and talk to somebody, and it'd be an entirely different conversation than what you would actually select if you were out in a crowd and looking for something. I know I have went to Rotary. Everybody has a tough time at work sometime, and maybe when you leave to go to Rotary, you have a terrible attitude in the way of a mind. But when you go to Rotary and you sit down and you talk to somebody, 5 minutes or something, and a few minutes, and then you have a program that somebody tells some good stories about their work or something that's going on. And I have left Rotary with a completely different attitude than I had when I came. So that's kind of what it's all about. I remember talking about our own rodeo when we had moved to Jim Warren Park from behind where the old high school was, and the Carter House, and when we moved out there, we had to have 1,000 wooden foldable chairs for the box seats. So we would get a truck and haul those out there and set them all up. But when the rodeo was over on Saturday night, about 10:30 or 11 o'clock, there wasn't a Rotarian. Doctors, I mean, they would all be there with their gloves on. We had a system there that within about 30 minutes we would load those 1,000 chairs, but you saw more Rotary going on there among those people. They were people that had a special place. They were placed down in the where the box seat was. So they would fold 2 chairs together and set them over the stands, and then this guy would set them over. Then we'd back the truck down the aisle there where they walked down to get in the box seats. Back the truck down there. There was 2 guys stacking them in the truck. There were 4 guys handing them up to the guy in the back of the truck. But we'd load those chairs in about 30 minutes, and you never saw as many happy people because the rodeo was over, the weather was good, it was a success, and that's what you were looking for.
Well, the Rotary, and we'll move on, the Rotary has been an important part of your life, and it just shows that web of commitment, and to you, it's part of your family. I know you
That's
and
right.
Mrs. Moody, when you'd go out of town, you'd have the opportunity to travel with the company of Moody's Tire, and there were many good, loyal people, and Goodyear would provide you incentives. You'd go out of town, but you'd look for a place to go and participate and put a little bit back in, not only in that community, but you have put so much back into our community, which kind of leads me, before we run out of time, I'd like to pick your brain a little bit about Franklin and those early days. I know that Moody's Tire was literally downtown Franklin.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you and your brother and many people around here were involved in those early days of Moody's, but there were so many activities downtown. It's certainly not what it is today. Some of the things back in those days were tough times. We were talking about one of the guests we had recently here was Miss Virginia Bowman, who I didn't realize until after she had left that her mother and Minnie Pearl, Sarah Cannon, were sisters. And so Miss Bowman's aunt was Minnie Pearl, and of course, which is a name in Middle Tennessee, if you've lived here any time at all, you recognize the name of Minnie Pearl. More women today have probably gotten familiar with the name of Sarah Cannon because of the cancer research that's done up in Nashville, than any one area that you could talk about. But if I ask you to go back down to those early days when you were not only selling tires but changing tires down around the square, Tell me a little bit about the times in Franklin in those early days. And I know you served in the military. You came out, and many things that happened during World War II, just as I was when I was in Vietnam, we go on in life. It's
That's
not
right.
always things you want to talk about or remember, but start me somewhere right after the war. You came back, you settled down, you picked this young lady to be your bride and said, well,
That's
this is
right.
home.
That's right. That's right. Well, I have to give Tom credit for talking about. We had the mumps together when we was in high school. He was already out working for Goodyear, and I was still in school. But he came home and we stayed and just in conversation. Because then the war came along, and of course he had a wife and 2 little children, and was still working for Goodyear. And of course, when the war started, Goodyear closed all their outlying stores, which he was a store manager down in Brewton, Alabama. So they brought him back to Murfreesboro and gave him the store there. And of course, every tires were frozen, everything was just shut down, and so he knew the retreading process because he started with Goodyear at that. And he was a store manager in Shelbyville, Tennessee, for some time, and but at the time he had left there. I was in the Philippines, and he wrote me a note, and he says, I have found some used equipment. The man has become disabled and he can't use it, and I'm gonna talk him, see if I can get it. And I have found an empty building in Franklin. I knew where Franklin was because I'd come to Willow Plunge as a kid, wanted to go swimming, and Willow Plunge was the place to go in Franklin. So
Now I have to interrupt you.
sure.
I'm not sure I know where Willow Plunge is at.
Willow Plunge. You go out Lewisburg Pike, and when you cross the railroad, go to the next double drive there and turn right.
I do know where Willow Plunge.
You go just 50 yards there, and you go right down that grassy bank there, and Willow Plunge was at the bottom
Okay.
of that hill, the coldest water in Tennessee. It was because it was fed by a spring. And but anyway, but that wasn't what people. They didn't go to swim. They come to see the pretty girls lay on the bank out there. It was a grassy bank out there. But anyway, it was a fun place to go, and you see a lot of friends. So anyway, I think I wrote. I said, sounds good to me, or something like that. But it wasn't long after that till the Japs gave up, and we went into Japan. And I left there the 13th day of January, 1946, and of course had to come home by boat. I got home on Friday and went to see my grandfather, I think, on Saturday, and to church with Mother on Sunday, and went to work on Monday. And so I had worked at a service station at that night, and so I knew a little something about changing tires. And so anyway, Tom was the best partner anybody could have ever had. So we had a great time together, we were the building was the 4th door up from what is now Starbucks. Starbucks was at the time was Mr. Dr. Jenkins, the pharmacist who it was called a drug company. Ralph Duke worked there and went to school at the same time to get his pharmacy license. When he come back, he worked for Gray Drug Company, which was down in the next block. The next block was, he was 2 doors from the square, and the store on the other side of him was Mr. Joe Trice's hardware store. And across the street on the right was the Williamson County Bank, and then the courthouse. You go on around the square, and years ago was the Model T Ford dealership was that Model A and Model T and so forth. And then across there, in the war years, Mr. Oscar Godwin owned what was known as the Red Grill then. That was a restaurant, and Rotary, and they all, well, no Rotary then, but whatever meeting anybody wanted to have was upstairs. And so they used that in the restaurant. And Mr. Godwin, he also owned the Ford dealership, which is on Main Street, right beside the theater. He was on as if you came out of the theater, as the old Franklin Theater sits now. If you came out of the theater, Mr. Godwin's Ford dealership was on the right-hand side, and Mrs. Walker, which Billy was in the service at the time, was on the left side, and we were almost straight across from Billy Walker's, the Walker Chevrolet, and then the Presbyterian Church where it is now. And Bennett Hardware was on the corner of 4th Avenue there, and Harpeth Bank was on the other corner. And so when Tom came to Franklin, there was a man named Woodrow Dickerson, which was a photographer in Shelbyville, and he and Tom were friends. And Woodrow Dickerson rented the upstairs of the Harpeth Bank for a photography shop. And the man named Floyd Sandlin, he was in Shelbyville. He came and opened a drugstore right beside Harpeth Bank, which was Sandlin Drug Company. So there was three men from Shelbyville, and they all became members of the Lions Club because there was no Rotary. There was a JC Club, and which I was in, but there was no Rotary or any other thing. They're just the JCs and the Lions Club. And so they were all members of that, and Bob Sewell and Lloyd Hardcastle, and Herbert Bowen was the guy that ran the theater. And of course he would be there at 11:30 every night, and he was the only man in town that wore collar and tie every day to work. But he'd come downtown about 10:30, 11 o'clock, and he would come up and want us to do something to his car, which it didn't need anything, and so we tell him, I said, Herbert, you don't need anything, and he just wanted somebody to talk to, I think. But anyway, we changed tires out in the alley behind the store, which you couldn't do now. Well, we had three retread molds in the back of the store, and of course from 46 to about 52 or 3, we got very few new tires. But we retreaded tires, and the mail carriers, when we'd go to work in the morning at 6 o'clock, there would be 1 or 2 mail carriers, cars sitting there, and they'd have a little note on the windshield say, my right rear is going down, or there's a flat in the back. But they would go to the post office and work their mail, and then they would come and pick up their car and take out on their route. So we'd have them all fixed and ready to go. But Mr. Will Lynch and Mr. Brown and a guy by the name of Rock Jennings, who was a big TV supporter, you could see him on any Saturday afternoon at the goal line of UT whooping them on. So he was a great Tommy West. And
I hate to cut you off because that's the whole purpose of this, but we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left, and I certainly want to say thank you for, I know you're a very humble man. You have always been involved, and it seems my 25 plus years of living here in this area, you seem to always be at those important things, and you are well respected, and that comes with great admiration, not only from me, but from many others. You're still involved in our community through the chamber. I see, I think about every morning, which I could take some lessons from this, I believe about every morning you make your way over to the rec center. They tell me you're there when the doors open most every morning. And it is just so encouraging. You are a good example for many of us, and certainly for our children and grandchildren. If I ask you to kind of summarize in 2 or 3 minutes of something that you'd like to say, something you'd like to convey, or something that I've overlooked, what would you like to touch upon?
I don't know what I catch myself. I can only thank God for letting me live this long. I had no idea I would live this long. I think I have lived in the greatest generation that you can imagine. Having being born in 1920, As a matter of fact, in another 25 days, I'll be 88 years old, which
Young,
is
88 young.
young. Okay, good. So I just have to thank the good Lord for that, and for our family, our children. I thank for them. I find myself worrying about these two little great grandchildren, of which I said that there's no use for me to worry about. I'm not going to be here when they make that decision of what they're going to make as they grow up, because it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And so they are very active in their church, even as little bitty girls. And the little 5-year-old, they come up home, and when we have a sandwich on Sunday nights, and she'll say the blessing, and it's a great blessing. It's you know, it's good to see that for them at this age, because that's the way their mom and daddy are raising them. And so we have so much to be thankful for, and for just take for Doug Hood, and for what he's done, and I mean the people that he has backing him up. I know Doug can't do it all, but Williamson County has got the greatest county, and people like you, what you have contributed to it, because you was a commissioner long before you were mayor, that made a lot of those decisions of which way do we go, what do we do here, but you made those decisions that put us where we are now, and that's unbelievable.
Well, and in so many things that any of us do, it's the people that work in and around the organization. Whether you're talking the Rotary, whether you're talking at home, I give the credit to our mates,
Right.
because we're always out working, and I, like you, am very fortunate, I believe, to be in a county that's so unique to anything around. But most everyone else feels that in their counties too, or at least they should.
Absolutely,
They
yeah,
should.
Yeah,
And
support.
but the thing in closing here is you have given.
Let's bring in our
much,
GMA
and
legal
encourage
analyst,
all
Dan
people
Abrams. And you know, the saying always goes that the grand jury will indict a ham sandwich.
Thank you for taking time out to come out today. We do need to go. We can make this show 2 hours, and I would never get tired of hearing your stories. But thank you for doing what you have done in Williamson County, and thank you for your generation.
Well, thank you for letting us. We've had a good time.
And I'm Rogers Anderson. We have to go now. Have a good day.
Recycling grocery bags is catching on.
Here's my favorite.
Let's reduce packaging by getting one big bottle, and it's recyclable.
Ooh, this box is heavy.
Or we'll get this small container of concentrate instead. It's recyclable too.
Now that's smart shopping. Less packaging and more recyclables.
All we're asking is for you to recycle. Hey, baby, reduce and reuse.
If we want to keep the blue in the sky, the green in the trees, we better care for the air we breathe.